Here we go. Another Nigel game, Doug. I do feel very
Okay.
privileged to get to look at that first tile.
We're off and running.
And we'll talk a little bit about, oh, wow, we're going to see a funny play potentially from, depending on which way Nigel elects to go with this rack. A word with kind of a goofy definition that I would have laughed at in middle school. Not sure if people are seeing that yet in the chat. But Nigel is maturely maybe going to play rapini instead of the word that I'm talking about. But yeah, a few words about Jon Shreve, a long time, very solid expert tournament player. One of the stronger players in North America. He's probably within the top 100 or something like that, if not higher. And just want to call out that Jon, an incredibly generous donor to the Word Game Players organization. His sort of family foundation contributes $100,000 a year into the coffers of WGPO. And a lot of that money, I believe 40,000 of that is being used to contribute to the prize pools across all the divisions in this event. And I think in large part, that is why we're getting to potentially see a player like Nigel Richards traveling across the world to compete in an event like this. So a huge shout out to Jon for his generosity. And he is a great player in his own right, Doug.
Oh, absolutely. And what a thoughtful gesture on his part. I mean, Scrabble is very indebted to him for that. We're very grateful for his generosity. And can I just shout out his very bright shirt? That's very cool.
Very nice.
Maybe that's a strategic tactic to distract Nigel. If anything, could distract Nigel.
So here we go. Nigel is going to play this word. Let's try to keep it mature in the chat. If anybody's going into the dictionary and figuring out what this word means, let's be adults or mature. If you are not an adult, let's try to be mature about this word. But a nice play by Nigel, 76 points. And I don't think Jon is going to have any suspicion that this word takes an S hook, Doug. It doesn't. But yeah, if Jon is doubtful at all, and if he were to tack on an S, and we're going to find out real quick because Nigel just drew socials as his rack. So we'll discover very quickly whether that word takes an S or not. And the answer is no.
I have a funny story about, I challenged an 8-letter word, asocials, one time against Greg Heidler, I believe. And it just looked so wrong, but
it somehow is good. Yeah,
I hadn't heard it ever used before, and I hadn't somehow seen that. It's pretty high probability. But the weird things you come across in Scrabble and remember.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
What's Jon gonna do with this? He's got a Z, but otherwise, not a great rest of his tiles. He's just going for cozy. Okay.
Yeah, seems reasonable. That is a very natural play to get the Z right here. Just want to call out a really interesting option if we can get in to point it out before Nigel, who had his preferred play of Classico through the blank C, was just blocked. But really interesting play once the board flips again. I'm still seeing it upside down, but when it does flip, I mean, I guess I could try to draw upside down. The play that I'm thinking about is, how do I draw an upside down Y? This is next level telestration, folks. Yob. This is the play. Oh, no, my work all for nothing. There you go. Look at that, Doug. Nigel is playing the aforementioned asocials. Very nice. So 2 bingos. That's brutal. If you're Jon, through no fault of your own, you've gotten hit with 2 straight bingos from the GOAT, and that's going to be tough to fight your way back from.
He's got his work cut out for him. Yob would have been interesting. Would that have yielded any bingos for Nigel?
Great question. The thing that I thought was cool about it is that if you draw, for example, an R, if you're Jon, you keep ZE on your rack and you're setting up a possibility to play something like Res and Biz after that play. So in addition to the defensive merit that it may or may not have, especially in this scenario, you get some upside with your Z. And that, I mean, maybe there are some times when Nigel plays. What if Nigel plays? If he's, I know it can't still fit on the board.
Classico would have still fit, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but then after that, you get the Z play going down some of the time, right? So there's, there's some upside there. So yeah,
or you see the S on the triple.
Right.
Oh no, or the O, I mean.
Yes, exactly. So, in any case, don't think Cozy was any kind of serious mistake or anything like that by Jon. I think Cozy is fine, and now he's in a tough situation, down by 100, and ideally he would love to play something right here to use up that triple, but I just don't see that he has anything starting with an A or an E, Doug.
No, he doesn't quite have Abbott with ABBOT or Abbott EBBET. And I'm not seeing that he can do any 5-letter word in that spot. And in that case, what's he going to try to do? He's separating bub. He might play bub and buy for 21. Looks okay. EIAT is vowel heavy as a leave. But he's got the P, the R, the S, the C open, right?
Nigel a lot of space.
Yeah, so it looks like he's going to go with that.
Seems pretty reasonable to me. If you wanted to get even more aggressive, you could play Babu in that spot, that same spot, but that does open up not only an S in the triple lane, but I believe Babool is also valid. You could hook an L to that, so you might regret that. But the cool thing about this play is that it does make it a little bit harder to play underneath the triple, and a good draw for Jon. So he's not quite out of it yet. That seems like he's a very, very good bet to play a bingo somewhere next turn. Doesn't feel like everything is going to get blocked between Septoria, Rotaries, and I'm sure some other stuff. Eroticas through the C. Yeah. So a lot of stuff available for Jon. Doesn't feel like Nigel will be able to block all of it, but Nigel can just play off his W and probably his O somewhere, and he should be a pretty heavy favorite to bingo on his next turn as well. So we'll see if Nigel draws something really bad and Jon bingos and draws something good, we might see this game get knotted up again.
Yeah. Interesting to see what Nigel does with this. He's separated now, and he may be underlapping it on the A socials spot there.
Yeah, right here. That seems much less insane than the same scoring, or maybe it scores. No, it scores more. This scores 3 less and is way more crazy and aggressive. So I feel like definitely Nigel playing the saner of the two options to play those 3 letters makes a lot of sense. But Jon should be able to bingo. Unfortunately for him, it's not going to really score a ton now. He's got the 2 options I mentioned of Septoria through this P, or Rotaries in either of the spots with your multiple R's through this R. So it's going to help, but Nigel will probably play something like Evert on his next turn, unless I'm missing a better, like a bingo or something that he'll have. And it's still going to be Jon looking up at a reasonably big deficit, Doug.
Yeah, neither Septoria nor Rotaries score very much. They will keep the board fairly reasonably open, although it will be challenging for Jon to remain keeping the board open so that he can bingo again after that. He is going to definitely need a second bingo at minimum, with the way that Nigel's shaping this board. That's the worst case scenario for Jon, is a blank bingo and then a second bingo coming back on the second turn. So he's definitely got a long way to go in this game, and it'll be interesting to see if he goes for rotaries or Septoria here. They both have different merit. Rotaries would give back an opening for both triples, but Septoria keeps the board a little bit sort of more defensive, which it looks like that's what he wants to do here.
Yeah, the nice thing about Septoria, as you say, Doug, rotaries would have opened the triples, but the nice thing about Septoria is that Jon probably needs bingos to come back in this game, and by playing through this P, you now have open space here and open space here, which is going to be semi-difficult to both close at once. So you kind of have two new quadrants of the board that are opened up if you're Jon, if you can draw something good. So I feel like it has some merit from that standpoint of giving Jon a lot of options to maybe bingo on a subsequent turn. If I get his score updated, there we go. He's got 117. But yeah, Nigel is going to calmly lay down the 44-point evert and go back up by 100-ish points. Not good news for Jon, who needed a little bit of a better draw than that, Doug.
Yeah. He's going to probably try to use the X, but I'm not seeing a great way to score a huge amount of points. He could play XU off of Septoria, but I'm not sure he wants to do that. It won't take any back hooks, and it won't leave him with any vowels, and it'll leave him FW. So all of those look bad. He might consider just fax or wax, or even unwax.
No to unwax, but yeah.
Oh, not oh, right.
But interesting idea though. Wax, that at
Just
least
wax.
preserves your lone vowel. I mean, maybe that's good enough to want to do. I agree that just playing XU here, leaving all the rest of that clunk, right? Like it doesn't even hook with an S. You take your X and U off the rack and you still have F, G, and W to go along with your S. But sometimes you gotta wrinkle up your nose and make that stinky play. I don't know if that's, warranted. What else could you do? And he's going to go ahead and play Fog, keeping the vowel. So a little bit more balanced, but only 20 points for this. Maybe the idea is if he can draw something a little bit better for that X that isn't so closing. I mean, the issue with playing XU is you really want Septoria to remain open, I feel. So blocking it at all is not what you're after. Septoria is a valid word, so keeping this S hook alive is probably really important to Jon.
Yeah, great point. Sorry, I think I was thinking of maybe unfixed or something like that.
Right.
Other thing, if he gets an A, he might have AX and Abai for a huge score. He could potentially play under now. EX or Nix, maybe he wants to go there, but it looks like Nigel's going to take that spot.
Cadet looks great, scores well, doesn't open anything new, does a lot of the things Nigel is happy to do here. Looks like a very solid play by him. That being said, if I'm Jon, I'm saying to myself, all right, that wasn't a bingo at least.
Right.
I can still battle. Maybe now is the time to play XU. I feel like he's maybe considering just playing XI for the long-term value of having an even better S hook, which does make some sense to me. Yeah. So this is a very conscious choice by Jon. You would never normally, Doug, want to keep WU on the rack, but I do think this makes some sense from a long-term standpoint.
Well, Jon retains the case S, the final S in the game, and that could be very big. If you're Nigel, though, this is a pretty easy line to handle just by playing above axe, potentially. Just 3 or 4 tile play there could be quite big. So it's a good opening, and it looks like Nigel will probably try to block that spot, I'm guessing.
It looks like he's considering playing odd here, which looks very, very nice from a standpoint of scoring well and keeping a flexible 2 consonant combination for next turn. But I do worry that this play actually kind of protects the XIS setup for a long time. And Nigel is potentially now pivoting to a play that I like much better, Neath.
Ooh.
Right here. This looks great. I was thinking about playing ETH, but putting the N on is even better, because if you give Jon credit for having the S, you don't want to just play ETH because SER is a word. Tacking the N on is much more restrictive against 7-letter words ending in S. So very, very clever play by Nigel. And I am guessing that if you assume that Jon has the last S, this play is going to perform fantastically well against that.
Oh, this is just a beautiful play. It also even sets up his D and A for taxa and ID on the next turn, potentially, if he wants it. So that's a gorgeous play.
Yeah, great idea there by Nigel. He saw the more standard play, but I think he realized that the particular inference of what does Jon have when he makes a play like XI, he's going to have that last S a ton of the time. And now you can see Nigel with radioed, which is potentially going to fit right here as a bingo. Does risk opening the triple, but Nigel, with some very clever play, is now knocking on the door of another win. You can see he's undefeated, Doug. It seems like the move back into North American lexicon play has not slowed him down a bit.
No. So far, everything's going very well for him, and he's making very clever plays as we expected him to do. And Jon is going to really have to come up with something on this turn and kind of remove some of those clunky tiles he's got. I don't know what he will do. He potentially could go for wins, WYNS. That doesn't score very well. Maybe just WYN at 10A. Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Yeah. This seems reasonable just because this lower one here seems more reasonable just because you are opening up at least a marginal threat in an area of the board where none exists. And that is something you want if you're Jon and you're down by 100. Is it likely that you're going to be able to hit that W with a bingo or something really hard? No, but it's better than no threat at all. And I don't think that Jon wants to obstruct his S and E by playing wins in that spot. He needs those letters to stay open. They are his best bet to try to get a bingo down right now. So I do think that win here looks like a reasonable choice. Jon's tiles really are kind of shouting out for him to try to play an N, try to play either the W or the Y, or ideally both. Looks like he's considering playing new. Maybe that goes down right here. Oh, sorry. That's a W, supposed to be. Is that? No, that still allows radioed. Oh, my God. Brutal. So, yeah, let's see if that's... Now Jon is going back to unso, which that would, again, go in a similar spot. I think that would block radioed. But it does feel like a lot of Jon's options here are going to still get whacked by Nigel's third bingo of the game.
Yeah, sure looks like it. Well, he's going for new. Okay. NEW is the play, leaving NUYS. Does set up a little spot for him, but in any case, we see that Nigel has radioed, and that is pretty much a very strong play for Nigel. So hello.
Here, I no longer see the.
There it is.
Okay, I guess we're back. Hopefully, people can still hear us. Okay. Cool. So radioed is the play. Anybody out there on YouTube still hearing me? Let me know. This is not a craven ploy for engagement. This is an actual kind of snafu happen. All right, I think we're saying hi. Anyway, sorry, Doug. I'm here now. I had some kind of issue, but it looks like radioed went down.
No problem. Yep. And Nigel's taking a very large lead now.
Yeah. Through very little fault of John's, I must say. It's just how it goes.
Yeah.
When you're playing any game between experts, let alone Nigel, who is going to find his bingos every time without fail. All right, cool. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, not sure what happened there. We'll be on guard for it. So yeah, no slight to Jon. He has definitely not really earned this result in any meaningful way. This is just how Scrabble kind of goes, Doug. Sometimes you are the windshield and sometimes you're the fly, as they say.
Yeah. He's making a nice play here on lay, opening the end, scoring 24, and balancing his rack. So I wouldn't say the game is exactly over, but it's going to take some really good draws here from Jon in the next couple turns.
Yeah. And Nigel is clearly ready to play Jinked into the D of radioed, which is going to score 69 points. That is a bingo score. So it feels like he's got it lined up. And in classic Nigel fashion, he's just taking an extra beat to see if he could possibly have anything better. A word like this, Doug, I have to say, when you get those letters, when you're studying anagrams, you're going to be able to unscramble this word very quickly. But it's hard to remember the validity of words like this. Like jink, you could remember is a valid for, but is it a verb or a noun? That's not as easy to recall.
I do this all the time. I think something is a noun and it's a verb, or I think it's a verb and it's just a noun. Those 4 or 5, even 6-letter words can be really tricky that way. And I don't have a good way to, advise somebody to learn what's good or not. You just have to kind of memorize. And maybe some people out there actually learn definitions and that helps them remember what's valid or not. But for myself, I don't have a strict way to keep those separate and to remember in my mind what's a verb, what's not a verb, what takes ed or even er a lot of times.
Yeah, it's tough. It's very tough. But Nigel, no such issues. I don't think I've seen him have that sort of command, recollection problem. And that goes for English, Collins, Spanish, French, whatever you want to say. He does not have that issue. So it is back to Jon. He's going to have to continue to play this out. There's still a fair amount of game left. there is a really cool play for John available here. You mentioned, Doug, earlier that the play of Neath was nice by Nigel to keep the AD combination to play underneath, but John can now play Oaf under there for a very nice score if he spots it. Not the most obvious, but I would expect him to see that.
I would too. That's a spot that he might be looking at right now, without the advantage of having a bingo here. And it doesn't take up any additional real estate where he might want to be looking to bingo next turn.
Yeah. See, what if he doesn't see that? He's probably just looking at something like Fang right here, which is a fair bit worse on the scoreboard. So I do think I like John's chance of seeing that spot, and we'll see how quickly he comes across it, if at all, which again, I think he will. And then what's Nigel going to do with his kind of weird double A, double O? Not sure what he's going to do, but I'm sure he'll figure out something good.
Well, he is Nigel, so I expect him to just keep rolling along.
Yeah, I mean, just something like Abai and Amma leaving the O's and the V seems to score pretty well. Oh, okay. So maybe John wanting to keep a vowel instead of playing all of them. Looks like he's honed in on this spot, but maybe not thinking about taxa here, or like I said, wants to go into next turn with at least one vowel. So back to Nigel. We'll see what he elects to do here. Fa for 26. And yeah, Nigel up by quite a lot. But again, even in games like this, you do kind of have an objective to, if you're Nigel, you want to win the game by as many points as you can. And if you're John, you want to cut that deficit, because the tiebreaker of your cumulative point spread can often decide a lot, even if it doesn't decide your placement in the tournament, which it usually does, frankly. Well, I mean, that's the main reason, right? It's, the odds of it playing a huge role in where you finish up in the standings are pretty good. So you want to try to win by as much as possible. And interesting, Mooter is Nigel's play, leaving AVA. So I think he's just trying to block as much space on the board as possible. There were definitely better scoring plays available than this, though, Doug.
There were. I think with his huge lead at this point, he's probably just going for defense. He sees there's a blank in the bag. And this really takes out the three best open tiles on the board now. There's just a J that could be bingoed with. And that's one of the hardest tiles to use. So looking tough for John. I'm not really sure what he's going to go for here, but that was an interesting play by Nigel.
Yeah, very much so. It seems to reduce John's bingo chances to next to zero, exactly as you said, Doug. There is very little space on the board left to bingo. And frankly, probably of the 1 or 2% chance that John has of playing a bingo after Mooter, some of those are probably 9-letter words through the M, NM, and maybe every so often KO that are going to be very, very difficult to find. So in practical terms, it might even be rarer than that to get a bingo down after that play. So to the point of, if you're Nigel, you want to win the game by as much as you can. Stopping John from getting another bingo down is a great way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing the brilliance of Nigel from turn to turn. Every single turn is a little bit different in what the goal of the play is, whether it's to score, whether it's to bingo, whether it's to balance your rack, whether it's to block the board up. He has the whole bag of tricks up his sleeve, and it's up to your opponent to overcome that and Jon certainly fought a hard game here, and he just hasn't had the tiles to work with him. So unfortunately for him, it's just one of those games that just feels very defeating.
Yeah, for sure. But I think he can take some solace in the fact that he really has not made any huge blunders that allowed Nigel to seize command of the game. Nigel literally bingoed with the first blank on turn 1 and then played ace socials on turn 2. So this definitely felt like it was going to be an uphill battle from the get-go for Jon. So that's going to happen. And, he'll still be in the mix at 3-3. We've mentioned it a bunch. This is round 6, the penultimate round of day 1. There are 31 rounds in this event, which there is a reason we play that many. Jon's going to exchange tiles here. It looks like he got rid of GGU. He could have played those same tiles, but he probably didn't want to block up the board any more than it is already. And it's not even that easy, Doug, to see where would Jon try to open the board if he wanted to.
I'm guessing he's just fishing for maybe, I don't know, journeys or something with the J, because I unless he has something else in mind, but that would be my guess. There's no Y, so the Y would have to be
maybe he should have fished for John Quills or something.
Or maybe he's, anything. Anything's possible.
The biggest possible, massive J bingo that he could find. That would have been kind of fun to see him hit or go for that, even if it would not have changed the eventual outcome in the game as far as the result going for Nigel. It would have been crazy to see. Because, I guess in Nigel's shoes here, now, what does he even have to worry about except for the J? I feel like he can just play something in this area of the board and pretty much call it a day for Jon's ability to ever play a bingo here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what he's doing exactly. And
this is interesting because he's played VEE. He could have played a couple of other options that used more like that, like AVE. He could have played, for example, right here, but he's keeping the 2 A's. I'm sure he has in mind that if he could draw something, right? If he could draw a T, for example, he'll have connect through this N. He's drawn the blank, so he now has that play. Whereas if he kept an E, he wouldn't have a play like that. I'm sure there's other words maybe that he was thinking about here, but that seems like a reasonable goal for that play, Doug. Maybe that's why he used his E's up here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And at this point, he's trying to pile the points on, and that would certainly be a good play for him to draw that T. And it looks like Jon is going to have to try to open something. I don't know what he can open. Maybe the ANA hook with, maybe he could play none. Un or something, but it looks like he's just going to go for Lorne.
Yeah, Lorne. I actually, it's so difficult to open anything that he might literally be saying, I'm just going to go ahead, and maybe he sees the potential of some big plays in that spot, and he's going to go ahead and try to block him now while he can. I don't think, getting another bingo down would be great, but it does feel semi-unrealistic at this point. So he could be shifting into spread preservation mode here, which frankly makes a good deal of sense. So
yeah, I don't see any way he can open the board.
Yeah, for sure. So now is where I just wonder is Nigel gonna just go ahead and play QAID here, or is he gonna consider playing like just the Q? Is it possible that he's gonna see some kind of 9-letter word through UN that he can fish for, a 10-letter word through NME? This is the sort of situation where really only Nigel can evaluate situations like that. I would just love it. Oh my God, please. let's see. I mean, he might just be saying, yeah, there isn't anything like that. I'm going to go ahead and play the very standard QAID right here. Makes a ton of sense, Doug. But I was kind of rooting for him to play Chi so we could try to figure out what the heck he was doing.
Yeah, that would have been extra fun content, but this is definitely the standard play here.
Yep, makes sense. And Jon appears to be ready to play Mush and Unlays, which that will definitely be his highest scoring play. A couple people are saying maybe he could fish for Quilaya through the J.
Whoa.
Right? Like he's really close. If you were to just switch this out with a Q, he would have that right now. Maybe, yeah, that was going to be tough for him to actually hit. It's hard to know, all things being equal. How could he have drawn into that? But all right, Mush emptying the bag. And now it's for Nigel to try to come up with what is almost unfailingly the optimal sequence here. Once again, Doug, 10 minutes. He's cresting into the end game with that 10-minute mark. It feels like he is always at roughly that level of time heading into the late game.
I mean, he's played so many games over his career, thousands and thousands. Maybe millions, but he's just kind of like the human version of the best Scrabble computer that exists in the world. I mean, he's literally better than almost any simulation. Even he's that good. So we're just lucky to be in Nigel's presence.
Pretty much.
And,
lucky to watch. And this is, as you would expect, this is the computer engine's best evaluated play. 22 points for Lung. I think part of why this is a nice play is that it stops Jon from using that same spot. He has very similar letters where he could play something into there, scoring very well. And it sets up Nigel to be able to play something like nail or mail in this spot on a subsequent turn. So another correct endgame for Nigel. Jon is supposed to play something like Gurn right here under the Q. That is the most points he can get. And then Nigel will finish this game off. So, to play Liane. Oh, right. Well, that's why Jon is supposed to play here, not because it's the most points, but it blocks the better play of Liane. Okay, got it. Beautiful. So if Jon does not see that spot, Nigel gets a really nice outplay. That's awesome. So that's going to do it for this game. We're almost at the tail end, and then we got one more game after this, Doug. How are you feeling? How's that stamina doing?
Oh, I'm just getting started. I mean, this is great. So it was great to see Heidi this morning on stream doing a great job, and I'm looking forward to seeing after I leave. I'm very looking forward to seeing everybody, all the other commentators who are co-hosting, I guess, with you. And thanks to Will for doing this. And I'm surprised you aren't there, honestly. I mean, you you can certainly hold your own over the board. We know that. We've seen that. And we know what a good player you are.
Well, it is a treat. And there we go. There is the backup plan from Liane to just mail or nail. Let me see. Did Nigel circle? No, he hasn't. He's about to circle. He dropped the pen under the board. His only mistake of the game so far. It's an M for mail, and that does it. But yeah, I feel like I would always want to be playing in big events like this, but I was sort of approached of, would you be willing to commentate? And I love commentating as well. So the fact that there's another big event coming up in the near future made me feel like I can get the best of all worlds by providing some commentary here, and then I get to go play. And I might add that Nigel's going to be playing that event too.
Yeah.
And maybe we will get some Will Anderson and Nigel Richards live streamed games. That would be pretty cool.
That
as
would.
well. So
Looking forward to that.
So there you go. A win for Nigel. Let me get the final score. Sorry. The final score is, if I have updated this correctly, let's see. There we go. 528 for Nigel to 331 for Jon. Tough break for Jon in this game to go down with the 2 early bingos for Nigel. That's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. Yeah, so we get a little bit more of our dose of Nigel, but there is a player we have not watched yet that we are set to watch next round, Doug, and that is Jackson Smiley. And we would really be remiss if we made it through a day of streaming without having Jackson on. Why? Because he is the 3-time defending champion of this event. That is
Wow.
unheard of in Scrabble, Doug. It is so difficult to repeat as a champion.
Oh.
He's done it 3 times running.
That is wild. How do we have an update on this? Is again another quick game from Nigel. I wonder how Jackson is doing in the standings so far. I haven't had a chance to check myself, but surely he's putting on another strong first few games here, just as usual, and just winning this one time, right?
Yeah, right. Winning this one time would be impressive enough. Winning it 3 times in a row is pretty insane.
Yeah.
Going into his previous round 6, Jackson was 3-2, but his opponent that we're going to see in round 7, Saint Vesdepunt, is 5-0 and having a fantastic tournament in his own right. So we should also emphasize that Jackson's opponent, Saint, is doing incredibly well and is right at the top of the standings. Well worth a trip to the streaming board for him.
Well, I'll tell you, Saint is a local player to my area, and I've played him many times, and he's a director and great guy and wonderful person. And geez, he's last a little while. I think, he had kids, I believe. He had a family, and he's kind of just ramping back into the game. So, I mean, he's been a really strong player for a lot of years, and he seems like he's sort of coming back to the game really strongly. So this is going to be exciting too, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Saint has been on stream a number of times that I've seen, and he also has a very entertaining style, willing to be very aggressive when the situation warrants it. So I definitely would enjoy watching him match wits with Jackson.